I'm going to ask one of our very special friends in the ministry, and I'll let him kind of tell exactly what he's doing, how he's doing, and what we refer to him as. You'll understand in just a moment, but most of what my friend Nick Stuva is doing is in North Africa, and he's going to tell you all about it here in just a minute. And I asked Nick if he would bring the word. Nick and Kimbra have been, can I say the word? The M word? Yeah, they've been missionaries for a lot of years, but they're in a sensitive area, so sometimes I can't always say the word missionary, but I've already blown it now. But man, come on, Nick Stuva, get up here, bring us the word. We're glad to have you in the house, my brother. God bless you.
Thank you so much, man. Wonderful. Yeah, it's wonderful to be with you guys on what feels like a Sunday morning, just because of the crowd that's here and the worship. And the churches that I grew up in, we only did communion on Sunday mornings. So actually, I'm beginning to wonder what Sunday mornings are really like at this place, if this is what Wednesday nights are like. So it feels like it's probably pretty ruckus around here when it gets in. You guys like to glorify God a little bit, don't you? Cool. Before we go on any further, I've got some very important introductions I need to make. Up here on the screen, hopefully have a picture of my family. It's kind of like this. This is okay. This is cool. I like this. But this is my family that you guys have to understand. This is my wife, Kimbra, that Pastor mentioned just before. She is smashed right in there between everything that she loves, everything that identifies who she is. Lexi, our little girl, is right there in the middle. She is right next to her new husband. They got married back in March. Aaron Hoving is his name. He is a fantastic individual, a really cool guy, a missionary kid from Kenya, and we are very proud and glad to have him in our family. The guy up there with the weird, crazy hair, a little bit wild, that's Ethan, my son, and the hair is very much reflective of his personality. It's just who he is. He doesn't care what you think. He's going to do what he does, and that's why we love him, because he's just cool like that. So this is my family, guys, and it's really cool just to be on this stage here tonight, and Pastor Kendall, just to have the opportunity to say thank you. Because we have been friends for a while, we have been partners, we have a relationship, and just say thank you for what you have done for my family in terms of financial support, in terms of prayer support, in terms of personal relationship as we continue on doing what God has called us to do. We started our missionary journey, if you will, in Tanzania, East Africa. There, we were working with community development. We were working with income generation, diversifying the tools of our pastors to reach some of the hardest to reach areas of Tanzania, taking the gospel in some of the most unreached areas of Tanzania. 2016, God really began to work on our heart and asked us to consider a change. And so as we followed the will of God, you guys actually worked with us and transitioned with us into the Arab world. 2017, we landed in Cairo, Egypt, where we began learning Arabic, and we began engaging with Arabic culture. And it wasn't one of these things where we went with a definite plan. We just knew that we wanted to do a specific style of ministry, what we call business as missions, a creative access. We wanted to use the tools and giftings that God had given us to help us break into new areas that you can't go into as a traditional missionary or as a preacher or something like that. And so in that way, we simply were very real and open with our leadership to say, hey, we don't have a specific country in mind. We don't have a specific people group in mind, but we have a specific ministry style in mind. And if you guys can use us, please give us direction on where to go. And I think leadership really likes that. That's kind of something that leadership likes. And so 2018, they asked us to consider a place called Tunisia. Now, Tunisia is North African country, is about 12 million people right on the Mediterranean Sea. If you were to look at a map, it's just south of Italy on the southern part of the Mediterranean Sea. 12 million people live within that country, 99.9% Muslim, with a small handful of Christians that we know. Probably about 500 Christians are within that community. And naturally, it's a country where you can't simply walk in as a missionary or as a minister of the gospel and say, here I am, this is what I do. You have to have a reason for being in that place. So leadership simply asked us, hey, would you consider going to this place? And so we landed in the capital city of Tunisia called Tunis. And friends, honestly, it was a pretty cool vibe. Has anybody been to Austin? You guys like Austin? It's a cool vibe down in Austin. This is the same vibe that we got in the capital city of Tunis. We're walking around, there's kind of this youthful edge to thing, an entrepreneurial vibe that we were getting. There was some really cool stuff that we got seeing visually, and we were kind of catching it. But to be truthful about that, it wasn't enough to really capture our imagination and our soul. Honestly, guys, we just weren't getting it. I mean, I'm not sure if that's a little bit too much for a missionary to really reveal to you, but hey, that's the truth of it. We were praying. We were there for 3 or 4 days praying, and it just really wasn't capturing our mind and our soul. The last day that we were there, my wife and I, Kimberly, we just woke up that morning and just say, hey, God, if you really want us to be in this place, give us a true sign. So what we did is we typed in on Google and we typed in this thing called co-working space. Are you guys familiar with co-working spaces? It's one of these places where these all young entrepreneurs and startup companies come and kind of work in a weird millennial way. And I don't know, they just got their thing, their vibe. And so we typed in co-working space and we decided that we were going to go to this one called Twiza. We followed the Google Maps walking through the city of Tunis, and we came to this big door, and we looked at all the placards that are on the sign looking for Twiza, and we found this little sticky note on one of the placards says Twiza right there. And so we're like, okay. So we walk in, and the really dark hallway, and up this really rickety, windy stair, and we find this little door, again with another sticky note, Twiza on it. So Kimber and I are just like, all right. So we knock on the door, nothing happens. We're like, okay, well, knock again. And after a couple of knocks, all of a sudden this young Tunisian opens up the door, kind of got a little bit of disheveled hair, a little bit off to the side. I think we woke him up at 11 o'clock in the morning. And we met this guy named Jihad. And then he brought us into his co-working space. He showed us all the cool things that he had got going on. He's an entrepreneur. He's a startup generator. He has a lot of cool things going on. Advocate, working for many different sectors of society. A young, passionate Tunisian who just has so many cool ideas about how he is going to change and create a positive change for his country. And he invited us to coffee, and Kimber and I walked with him through the streets, and we're sitting there at kind of like this little kind of a French-style cafe right in the middle of Tunis, drinking coffee, finding out about Jihad. And Kimber, all of a sudden, this God-ordained moment, just looks over at Jihad and says, Jihad, have you ever met a Christian before? And here's this young man who is 28 years old, who is speaking more than just French, Arabic, and English. He speaks many different languages, very well connected, very well educated. He looks at Kimber and says, no, I've never met a Christian before in my life. Kimber says, well, you've met 2 Christians here, and we're going to find a way to live here in Tunisia and work with you here in this place. So I'm like, well, I guess the Holy Spirit used my wife to solidify what was going on. And friends, that's what we did. We found a way. What we found out is that Americans can actually walk into Tunisia and create a company for $500. And so that's just what we did. We found an identity that allowed us to be there. And we found that as we began to work with people, that it kind of hit their head about why we were in this place. We found out that it actually opened up their heart for the message that we have to tell. You see, we began working with Jihad and following some of the projects that we had. We created this little company, a consulting company that actually was a service company. It just allows us to do anything really legally, to take money. If they will pay us to do something, we'll say yeah, and they'll take money and stuff like that. We began working with Jihad, and it was one of these things where we would go to dinner and go to lunch with Jihad, and my wife would just look at him as we're looking at this beautiful steaming bowl of couscous with hot chili peppers and chicken and stuff, all of it. And Kimber would look at Jihad and say, hey, Jihad, we're going to go ahead and pray and bless this meal, right? And so we pray and bless this meal, and we look up, and Jihad has this massive smile on his face, and he's like, that was amazing. After that, the next time we had lunch with him, I forgot to pray. And he's like, hey, we got to pray for the meal. We got to bless this meal. Realized that everything that we were doing, we were modeling Christ-like behavior, because that's where he was at in that place. You see, what we did is we started this company that allowed us to work with him and allowed us to be in that place. And we called this company 11 Talents. And we spelled it XITLNTS. A little bit of a mouthful, but digital property these days kind of comes at a premium. So we kind of had to find a way that was easy for us to get a website going on. But also XI is the word for the Roman numeral 11. And talents, we actually spelled it in an Arabic way. So it kind of pulled in this Roman Tunisian vibe that they still have in that area. And what it does is it gives us a very great way, an easy way just to step into conversations. Because as we hand people our card and they like, oh, in the French Arabic way, they were like, zi talent. What does zi talent mean? We're like, well, we're Christians. My wife and I are Christians, and we go to the Bible as a source for wisdom and guidance and understanding about how to deal with different circumstances in our lives. And we find a story there about this rich ruler who actually leaves and goes on a journey. And when he does, he gives talents to his servants. And you guys know the story, right? Yeah? To one of his servants, he gives a sum of money, a talent. He gives 5 to one of them. He gives 2 to another. And to another one, he gives 1. And then when the ruler returns, he comes back and sees what his servants have done. 2 of them did a great job. The one who had 5 multiplies into 10. The one who has 2 multiplies into 4. But that one, what does he do? He buries it in the ground. And friends, if we just stay on that for just a little bit, but think about this. You know what? Those 2 who multiplied their talents, who took the 4 or the 5 and changed to 10, who took the 2 and multiplied to 4, they received the title of good and faithful servant. Now, friends, that's actually a really cool title, isn't it? Good and faithful. But if you mind if I just kind of press into a little bit, take a little bit of, I don't know, maybe a little bit of rope here, if you will. I think that that's kind of where the church is at right now. We're kind of stuck on that faithful. But I think what we're doing is we're kind of stuck on that idea of being faithful in the way that the last servant who had the 1, his definition of faithful. Think about that for a moment. Because truthfully, friends, he was faithful with the 1 talent, wasn't he? At least he didn't lose it. And I think that that's where we're kind of at as a church right now. We're thinking that faithfulness means that we can't lose those things that were given to us in the past. So that means we need to hide it and bury it down so that at the very least we don't lose what God has given to us. But friends, I feel like there is a certain definition that we have of faithfulness that's actually tied with fruitfulness. Because the 2 who received that title of faithful, the one who took 5 and multiplies into 10, friends, that is a fruitful multiplication that actually demonstrates the true understanding of faithfulness that they have. Are you following me here? Is this I don't know, am I preaching to myself up here, guys? Are you following with this? I like this idea of faithfulness being connected with fruitfulness because we can trick ourselves thinking that we are being faithful, but at the same time, hiding and covering and dodging for the shadows, trying not to let this thing that God has given us to be stolen. Like we're protecting something that's ours to protect. You see, those 2 who received that title of faithful, they actually went out and did something with it. They multiplied with it. Friends, they sacrificed, if you will. They sacrificed their time, they took the risk, and they understood that their master expects something of them. So they went out and did something with the talent, the sum of money, that thing that had been given and entrusted to them, and they multiplied it, and then they received what it was. Friends, think about this. It actually says there in the Bible that when the master came to the one who buried it into the ground, the servant kind of starts groveling a little bit. And he says this arrogant phrase to his master. He says to his master, he says, "Master, I knew you to be." I knew you to be. And he says, a hard servant, a hard person who reaps in places where you have not sown, and you receive a reward in places that you haven't invested into. Friends, to me, it seems like the servant really didn't know his master. But he arrogantly stands in pride and says, I know you to be, but then he didn't act on the knowledge in a way that produced fruitfulness within his life. Are you following me here, guys? An application that I can make to that is kind of like how some of us approach church. We say, yeah, you know what? God has made me in a certain way, and therefore, I don't need to be up on the stage in the church. Because I know God has made me. Or you know what? I don't need to really serve in the church because God, and I know what God, it kind of becomes this excuse. You know how many times me as a missionary stands at my little missionary table, passing out my little missionary cards, people come up to me and say, you know what? I know that God really called me to be a missionary, but I knew you to be, Master, but your actions do not follow your knowledge, and therefore your faithfulness actually becomes a self-centered justification of your own fear rather than the true fruitfulness of the faithfulness that God has put into our lives. I don't know if I'm getting too hard here, guys. I didn't really get into this. But I feel that that's where we are as the American church right now. We need to see faithfulness that produces fruitfulness. We need to see God-fearing, saved lawyers who are producing good and just rewards within their systems. We need to see teachers who are investing faithfully, receiving the fruits of these rewards, opening young minds. We need to see artists and we need to see journalists who are following their passions in the way that God has truly made them to be, in a way that is faithful to Him and fruitful to Him. Friends, don't think that you need to be up on this stage in order to be fruitful. God has called you and me to walk into this society, to engage with this culture in the way that God has produced within us and created us to be. And there's no excuses for it to say no to those sort of things. It's kind of like this idea of sacrifice, guys. I got this thing of sacrifice. It's like, well, if I sacrifice what God wants me to, then He's going to magically transform me into something that I don't want to be. You know, my friends, it's like this. It's like the blacksmith. I know it's kind of an archaic deal, but the blacksmith, he comes to the temple and he offers his sacrifice on the altar. He doesn't magically transform into a priest. He gets up off of his knees and he returns to his foundry and he continues to be a blacksmith so that he can come again and offer sacrifices one more time in the way that God has created. And that's what I'm trying to say here, guys. Be faithful and fruitful with what God has called you to be, the vocation that God has called you to be. When those wonderful Tunisians look at me and ask me, what is Z Talents? I give them that story. And I said, you know what? This is what happens. The guy comes back and we see that the one who has 5 multiplies into 10. The one who has 2 multiplies into 4. But the one, it's actually stripped away from the one and it's given to the one who has 10. He now has 11 talents. And so my question to you is this: what has God put in your hands? And I ask him, has God put ideas into your head? Has He put resources into your hands, relationships in your community, passion within your heart, energy within your body to do and make a difference here in Tunisia? What has God put into your hands? How can we multiply that to see a better future for Tunisia? Friends, what have I done in that moment? I've let them know that I'm a Christian. I've let them know that I'm faithful and I follow that faith. But at the same time, I am concerned about what they are concerned about. And in that moment, friends, we just get this wonderful welcome. People love working with us. We love working with people. If they want to deal with cryptocurrency, we're finding ways to deal with cryptocurrency. If they want to deal with art, we're finding ways to deal with art. Well, all of this is an opportunity for us to build relationships so that we can declare the glory of God. And friends, it's so much fun. Past 3 years, we've built incredible relationships, both as just business people in Tunisia, working within anything that we can, but also just wonderful relationships with peoples and individuals. As we began to say yes to different opportunities that came across our way, we just built some incredible relationships. In fact, we kind of got a couple of opportunities. Of course, you've got Jihad, who's just incredible. He's just got this beautiful smile. We started reaching out to other people, and we got this invitation to this group called the Rotary Club. Has anybody heard of the Rotary Club? I, growing up with the Rotary Club, always watched my grandpa go to the Rotary Club. So I kind of had this vision that the Rotary was just kind of for old people who had a lot of money and they wanted to splash it around or something like that. Well, it turns out in Tunisia that Rotary is very live and active within the youth culture of Tunisia. And we found out that there was this group of Rotarians who actually wanted to create a new Rotary Club. And they wanted the distinction of being the first Rotary Club in North Africa that operated and dealt completely in English. And because of the work that we are doing in the business community, we received that invitation. And it just so happens that Kimber and I actually speak English kind of pretty good. I'm not sure if you guys can understand me or not here. I have kind of a bit of a northern thing going on here. I'm actually from the north. I'm not really Texan, that sort of thing. So, but we sit there and we began working with these young, entrepreneurial, well-educated, actually well-endowed. These guys have a lot of money, these young business professionals who really want to make a difference in their community. We start working with them and building more relationships. And Just incredible stuff. And these young Muslims who are there wanting to find this thing called COVID hits Tunisia, and everybody's kind of thrown into a mix a little bit. But all of a sudden, these Rotarians that we're working with, they realize that there's actually refugees from sub-Saharan Africa who are actually caught in Tunisia and they have nowhere to go. And so they decide that they are going to take their opportunity and they're going to reach out into this little community of these refugees from sub-Saharan Africa and do something. And it's crazy to me, they decide that they're going to reach out to these guys and they're going to do some incredible things. And they find that they are actually congregating around a Catholic church, an old Catholic church that's just kind of there in the middle of everything there in the capital city of Tunis. And when they start thinking about this idea, they actually come to me and they say, hey, Nick, we decided that we're going to do this action and we're going to give away some food. We're going to give away some clothes, some diapers, anything we can to help and reach out to these refugees that are here. And we've decided that we're going to do it on December 25th. I'm like, cool. And they're like, yeah, we're actually going to go to the Catholic Church on Sunday, and we're actually going to do this thing for them. And Nick, we understand that you and your wife have actually done some humanitarian work down in Tunisia before. Would you give to us a seminar on dignity? I'm like, sure, I would love to do some dignity stuff with you. So I go through this whole thing and say, guys, as we go into this idea, we're going to do this. And you know what? We're going here on this one of these most sacred and holy days of the Christian faith. We're going to be at this church with these Christian people who are caught in your country. And you guys just need to understand that the Christmas story, the Christmas message is all about God giving dignity to you and me by sending his son in the form of a baby so that we can understand and follow him as we reach and come back to God. And I'm sitting there preaching the gospel to these young Rotarians at their meeting. One person raised up their hand. There's like, that's great, but why are you talking about all this religious stuff? I'm like, you guys got to understand, we're going on their territory. You need to know how Christians view their day so that you can show dignity to them. It was so much fun. They couldn't say no. We actually go that day, friends, and we walk into this Catholic church, a super cool Catholic church built a very long time ago. It's kind of grandfathered in, even though the country is Muslim and there's a lot of strict rules. These churches, this Catholic church in particular, was able to continue on and kind of just be allowed to do what they do. You know, they're kind of a humanitarian deal. And so these young Rotarians, Muslims, just walk in and they sit on their benches. And this is the first time I was in this Catholic liturgical mass, Christmas mass, and it was the up, down, you know, the whole thing and this and that and whatnot. And it was all done in French and Arabic. And they did a really good job. They did a fantastic job. At the end of it, really, we got together, we shared food, we had tea, they gave their gifts, they're doing all this stuff. I had my camera with me, so I started taking pictures of the church, and I kind of stepped outside of the church and taking pictures of the doors and the wood and all of the cool things that are around. And I got a tap on my shoulder. And I look up, and this very large individual with dark sunglasses. Are you media? I'm like, no, I'm not media. I'm just here I'm with the Rotary, you know. And he's like, where's your pass? Where's your permit to do that? And I'm like, oh, no. I don't have anything. I'm just documenting our time here. Found out that he was secret police, and the Catholic Church is always monitored about who goes in and goes out. And it's illegal for me to take pictures in that situation. So I'm like, oh, I got to the end of my French and the end of my Arabic. So I was like, hold on just a minute. I walk in and I talk to one of my Rotarian friends named Ahmed. And Ahmed actually isn't Tunisian, he's actually Egyptian, but he's part of the Arab League of Nations, and he is assigned to Tunis. And so as he's working with these Rotarians, we were building this really cool relationship with them and stuff like that. And I just go to Ahmed and I said, Ahmed, there's a guy out there who's kind of giving me some trouble, and I'm not sure if I'm in trouble or not. Can you come and help me? And you have to understand, as Ahmed walks out this door, he looks up at the policeman. Ahmed's like kind of like down here, bald head. He's like down here. And he looks up at the policeman and just busts into this really harsh guttural Arabic. And he just starts pointing his finger and waving and saying, da, 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 da. And I caught enough to say, no, you can't do this. These are our friends. He pulls out his diplomatic thing and starts waving it in the guy's face. It ends up that Ahmed actually takes the policeman by the scuff of the collar and escorts him out of the church and throws him out and says, we're doing good work. These are our people. We're invited here. Leave us alone. I mean, friends, just think about that. A Muslim man, using his political power and his diplomatic status to defend what was going on in that church. Friends, and I would love to say, guys, honestly, I would love to say that he was actually defending the church. But the truth of it is he was defending his relationships. If you look at the statistics, friends, over 75% of the people who have actually come into the church come into the church because of relationship. Not because they've been argued into the church, or they've been convinced into the church, or that they've somehow been persuaded to come into these things. The majority of people who are in the church, the friends you are looking at right beside you, the friends that you come to church with, are here because of relationship. Friends, and that's what it means for us. We build relationship. We use business, and we try to do business as well as we can so that we can build relationship. And as we build relationship, what it does is it breaks down the walls, and it breaks down all of the hardness of heart and allows the gospel that we preach all of the time through our actions, through our words, through the activities that we're about, through those small things that I say, yeah, praise God. God gives us the grace for this and God gives us love for that. It causes questions to be asked. Friends, January 6th happened. And it's all in the news. We're hearing about it right now. But in Tunisia, when January 6th happened, I began to get message after message after message of my Tunisian friends saying, hey, Nick, we know what the Democrats are. We understand what Republicans are. But what is this political party called evangelical? They said, everything that we hear reported on the news about evangelical, it feels like you are evangelical. And I said, yes. And I took advantage of my relationship to give a proper understanding of what it really means. What it really means to be grasped by the love of God in such a way that it transforms your life, that you're willing to leave family, friends, country, and to go into the world. And as you go into the world, we're not going into the world arrogantly. We're not going into the world saying that we have something better for all of these people. We're going into carrying that simple message that Jesus Christ died for me. He died for you. And because of that, his love is enough to welcome you into his body and into his relationship. Friends, we took communion tonight. I long and pray for my friend Jihad and my friend Ahmed and my other friends that I have there to be able to take communion with us one day, faithfully giving their saying, God, Jesus' body was broken for me as well. I'm looking forward to the day where they can actually participate and be in a worship service like you were in this worship service tonight, friends. Such a powerful moment that we can come together and with our words and our song and with music, we can worship and glorify God. I would long for them to be in those places. But friends, the truth of it is, it's not happening yet. The only thing that we can do is return, to find one more project, to find one more point of a relationship, to find one more opportunity to say and to speak the name of Jesus Christ in an authentic way that strikes through to the heart so that Jesus Christ will be glorified. And as Pastor Kendall prepares to come and end the service how he wishes to, I pray that I just leave that word with you, friends. It's not for the people on this stage to engage in that way. It's for you and I, empowered by that same love that Jesus Christ has for you, the same death that he died on the cross for you, to enter into our communities and to find our own jihads, to find our own Ahmeds in this community. And they don't have to have the name Ahmed, they don't have to have the name Jihad, but their name needs to be written on the Lamb's Book of Life. And in that way, friends, it is your responsibility to do that here in Carrollton, in Plano, wherever you find yourself, just like it is for my responsibility to do that in Tunisia for this time. I pray that that just sticks with you and that it actually transforms us all and that we begin to see God's body grow and grow in this place.